Hello and welcome. We'll be looking at the Cancer season forecast today to get a better understanding of all of the opportunities that may well present themselves to us this month and how we can best position ourselves to take full advantage of them. If we haven't been together before, my name is Patrick Geary. I'm an intuitive astrologer, an energy healer, a life coach, and a heart-centered creative writer, and I'm really glad to be with you today. And we'll dive into more of my impressions of what this energy offers, and we'll take a look at the astrology. But before we do that, I just want to invite you right now into a moment of silent reflection to just tune into what this month ahead feels like for you. To take 3 nice deep breaths and to just notice any impressions, any insight, and any wisdom that wants to reach you now. And this is exactly what I do before I sit down to record these forecasts. And as I do this, very often, or I might say almost always, I immediately start to see an image, something that comes into my mind's eye with such a force of clarity and emotion that I know it's true, or at least it's true for me. And the image that I got this month was this image of a beautiful azure. I really heard this word very clearly, a beautiful azure, that gorgeous turquoise blue color, a beautiful azure heart-shaped pool at the bottom of waterfalls. And I saw this pool leading into a river that allowed for this gorgeous clear water to flow on and away from the pool. I'll duck down to the side so you can see what I saw. And it really felt to me like what we are all getting over the course of this month is a deep cleanse for our hearts. It felt like there are these waterfalls, these very powerful, moving forces that are coming into our bodies, that are coming into our emotional landscape in particular, and giving us a power wash. There's so much emotional residue that can stick with us, that we can accumulate over the course of the years, maybe even things that we inherit, things that we bring forward from other lives that sit with us and sit in our bodies. And when we invite this powerful force of a waterfall, this clear, moving, strong energy, it can wash all of these little, it's like these little chunks, these little pockets of density or heaviness that have been sitting with us, maybe even things that we didn't realize were there. It can wash all of those clear, bring them into this beautiful turquoise color, and allow for them to flow out into this gorgeous, lush landscape, to nourish this landscape all around us. And these were some of the key themes that I saw in the energy of this month, this real sense of cleansing, powerful cleansing, in order for us to better sit in a place of calm and beauty and to nourish the landscape around us. I'll say too, this has been part of my own personal experience as I've been tuning into this energy, and this is often something that I get when in advance of, in this case, the sun moving into the sign of Cancer. I almost get this little preview just by tuning into that energy and feeling what it feels like in my body, in my life, so that I get a chance to share that with you and see what resonates. And this is very much what's been present with me for the past few days. It has felt like I am suddenly aware of so much heaviness in my heart. And it's not heaviness that's tied to something that's happening in particular in my life right now. It's not reactive or a response to what I'm seeing in my immediate environment. It feels old. It feels like these walls or these little chunks that have just been sitting in my heart for all this time without me noticing them. And now that these waterfalls are rushing through and this power and this force is coming into my body to cleanse and clear them, I am becoming aware of them. And I'm feeling them start to leave and feeling them start to move. And I'm feeling my heart really start to open. And I'm feeling my energy start to flow. And I'm feeling as it starts to flow and as my heart is opening, that I'm more able to serve and that I'm more able to nourish. And not just myself, but all those who are around me. So I encourage you to tune into that for yourself. And maybe even if you feel some of that heaviness, or if you encounter some of those, we call them old emotional resonances that feel like they're just stuck to you in some way and presenting some kind of a challenge to you opening your heart or to you living more fully in alignment with love, to invite those waterfalls in, to invite them into your body, specifically to invite them into your emotional body, maybe even to imagine your own heart being placed in this waterfall, allowing for whatever is being held to be cleared away, to be washed away, to be purified, and to flow out. And knowing that if we really want these things to be cleared away, and in my own experience, we most certainly do, then that does involve allowing ourselves to be vulnerable and allowing ourselves to really feel what we feel. And this is how we allow for these things to be cleared, by putting our attention, our loving attention, on our hearts, in our heart space, and letting it flow. Recognizing what the feeling is. Every time we recognize what a feeling is, we're allowing for it to flow. We're allowing for that energy to move through our bodies and through our systems. So it's just with that simple awareness that we really are able to release some of that heaviness and to let that flow come more clearly into us. And it's something I look forward to doing as the month progresses, really just sitting in that heart space, inviting that waterfall energy to cleanse and clear, and allowing for it to flow out as more nourishment into the world around me. And this also makes perfect sense, of course, when we start to look at the astrology, particularly if we're looking at the astrology just from the perspective of the sun in Cancer, which has so many of those gorgeous themes. Cancer is a water sign, and it's also a cardinal water sign, so it has this initiatory energy. So the idea of looking at this source, looking at this waterfall, this water that is rushing through to create this beautiful lake that then becomes this mobile river that flows off into the landscape. Cancer is really that energy of that waterfall. It is this creation of source. And we associate it very much with the womb, a safe, wonderful, nurturing, protective environment, again, filled with water. We associate it with tenderness. We associate it with care. And these are all of the things that become available to us as we're getting more and more in touch with our feelings. And Cancer is that space very much of having feelings, of generating emotions, of recognizing the emotions that we're generating. And it can also be a place where we feel like we need to protect ourselves, because sometimes when we enter into the world and we show our feelings, we're not necessarily met with people who can understand, respect, acknowledge, and accept those feelings. So it can be a part of our lives where we put up protective layers, where we seek to shield and protect our feelings from other people because we're worried that we might get stepped on, that we might not be understood. And this is really an invitation to take down those walls, to remove those protective layers, to feel safer inside yourself, to know that you are safest when you are feeling your feelings, and that you perhaps don't need anyone else to acknowledge or accept them. All you need to do is be true to your own knowledge of your feelings, to the truth that lives already inside. The more that we trust our feelings, the more that we trust our hearts, the more that we trust ourselves to move through our lives. So this is a beautiful opportunity to really feel what you're feeling. Maybe this is what life is all about, having feelings. We feel what we feel just because it feels good to feel. And the more that we do that, the more that we trust it, the more that we're able to move through our lives and bring this wonderful sense of fullness to everything that we do, whatever the nature of those feelings might be. So let's take a peek at the astrology together. I'll pull up a chart, and this is the only chart that we're going to look at together, at least in this part of the video. And what I'm looking at here is the ingress. And the ingress is the moment when the sun enters into the sign of Cancer. And you'll see This is the sun at 0 degrees and 0 minutes of the sign of Cancer in this chart. And that happens here in London on Sunday, June 21st at 9:25 a.m. And I always think it's really interesting and instructive to look at this ingress chart to give us a sense of the overall impression, the energy that's going to be with us over the course of the month. It is like this snapshot that really gives us a solid entry point to understand what we can expect over the course of the month. Now, of course, over the month, the planets will continue to move. We'll be able to see how that chart shifts. And I do that in the second part of this video, which you're also very welcome to subscribe and tune into. And if you're just looking to get a sense, an overall impression of what does this month hold and how can I tune into it, this chart is a perfect way to look at that. This moment that that sun enters in, it's sort of like a birth chart, the same way that you have your birth chart. The planets continue to move, everything is in motion after you're born, and also that chart gives a real sense of meaning about what you can expect over the course of your life. So in this particular chart, as we see that sun moving into Cancer, one of the things that I noticed right away is I noticed that we have this sun in a relationship with the north and south nodes of the moon. And I can see here that the sun is approaching a trine with the north node of the moon in Pisces, and it's also approaching a sextile with the south node of the moon in Virgo. So this is putting the sun in touch with this nodal axis. And this nodal axis is an axis I very much associate with feelings of fate and destiny. And it also has this real sense of power. It's like the gates of heaven, where things are moving in and things are also moving out. That north node often representing what things are moving in, and the south node representing what things are moving out or dissolving, dematerializing, falling away. So whenever I see a planet in this sort of relationship, the trine and sextile, which are both supportive or more harmonious aspects, it feels to me like there is this connection with the gates of destiny. And I might say that it feels like it's maybe like an extra oomph to our experience of conscious manifesting or materializing. It can be a real powerful position for planets to be in because they're working with these energies of what am I drawing in and what am I releasing, and they're working with them harmoniously. So this may be a month in which you're really noticing that your thoughts, that your feelings are being reflected maybe more immediately in the physical world. And maybe you're more aware of how your energy is creating your experience. So it's a great month to be able to play around with those things, even if it's just little requests or little ideas or little noticings, to really see how things are being reflected back to you. And to remember that, as the sun would certainly want us to know, that you really are the creative force in your own life. You are giving birth to yourself in every moment, as we could think about with that Cancer energy. And as you do, you get to experience the world in a new way. So I wanted to highlight that. I did also want to highlight that the sun is coming into, it's soon to come into a square with Neptune sitting over here in the sign of Aries. And when I was tuning into this energy, I always like to see the sun and Neptune together. It was a beautiful dream-like quality. And I'm really noticing too some of that water symbolism. Neptune is very often associated with water, as too is Pisces, the north node. And with that sun in a trine to Pisces, really that welcoming in of the waters, the welcoming in of intuition. And that can be really much that direction when we're looking at the north node in Pisces versus the south node in Virgo. That really is, I'm welcoming in intuition, and maybe I'm releasing the logic, maybe I'm releasing the analysis, some of these things that have been perhaps clouding or obscuring my ability to tune in to my greater intuition, into the bigger picture, into what's really going on this higher level where we experience our consciousness. And Neptune can have a similar effect here. When Neptune and the sun get together, it feels almost boundless. Neptune is a wonderful reminder that we extend across time and space, that our existence is eternal. And that makes so much sense with that sun and Neptune coming in together. That sun also really has this feeling of eternal existence, of the source of life. So really feeling ourselves beautifully connected with the source of life, with our dreams, with our passion, with our inspiration. All of these things can be present when we have the sun and Neptune coming into a square together. A square also is asking us for some sort of adjustment, and it can indicate that there might be some sort of a tension, perhaps. And what I was really noticing here is this potential tension that could exist when we're looking at Neptune in Aries. And in Aries in particular, we can be so focused on the self and the individual and our experience and us as the creator and us as God. We are all God. We are all creators, and it's wonderful to be in that awareness. And also, at times, it can feel really disillusioning if we're looking around and we're seeing things that we don't particularly like or we don't particularly enjoy. And one of the patterns that I'm noticing start to come up, especially with this Neptune in Aries, is maybe this idea that because I am the creator, because I am God, I need to be able to do everything myself. I need to be able to realize my dreams by myself, and I can realize my dreams by myself. Everything is possible for me to do just as me right here. And on one level, that certainly could be true. And also, if you look around, we are surrounded by other beings. So many people who are here, and beings who are not necessarily in human bodies also here with us. And they are also God. They also have all of these powers. We are all part of this bigger thing. And does it help us to have this idea of independence that excludes being nurtured and supported and helped by others? And I'm realizing more and more that perhaps it doesn't. So maybe one of these adjustment points is to realize that we don't need to be focused on our independence when we can be focused, as Cancer might appreciate, more on our interdependence. And how can our dreams and our hopes and what we wish for, how can they nurture others? How can they nurture us? And how can they also nurture others? And how can others nurture them? And how can we nurture others' dreams and others' hopes and others' highest ideals? How can we do this in a way where we're allowed to work together in a safe, wonderful container? And especially with Cancer, for me, there is really this reminder of family and tribe. And that can certainly be a force that divides us when I feel like you're not part of my family, you're not part of my tribe, and we are working at cross purposes in some way. But if I can expand my awareness to that higher perspective and really appreciate we are all in this together. You are part of my tribe. I am part of your tribe. We are all family. Then we get permission to nurture one another. And we start to feel more comfortable with this idea of interdependence because we truly are all one. So I also wanted to highlight some of the other things that will be happening in the sign of Cancer. One in particular here is we have Mercury approaching a conjunction with Jupiter towards the end of Cancer. And this isn't a conjunction that's actually going to happen because we'll have Mercury soon turning retrograde. And again, we'll talk about that more in the second part of the forecast. But I did want to acknowledge their closeness here as we're looking at this particular chart and this impression point. And when I was thinking about Mercury and Jupiter, and Mercury again is so much around communication, around vocabulary, language, listening, and Jupiter is such a wonderfully expansive and abundant energy. I was really thinking about how I myself have been working very intently the past few days on giving a very clear voice to my feelings and just saying in any given moment how I feel about something and not muddying the waters. And I think this is something we'll get to explore more in that retrograde, not muddying the waters with thoughts about feelings. Thoughts are not the same as feelings, and thoughts about feelings are not always particularly helpful because they take us out of the feeling. They move us immediately from the heart, which knows how we feel, into the head, which wants to think about how we feel and wants to understand how we feel. And that can certainly be valuable and interesting. But here, with Mercury in Cancer, it feels to me like we're really being invited into that place of vocalizing our feelings plain and clear. And with Jupiter there, it feels like as we do that, we may become aware of our feelings in a newer and deeper and richer and broader way. We may get a bigger emotional vocabulary. We may be able to listen to more nuances and expressions of what's present within those feelings. We may appreciate, I don't want to say necessarily a deeper complexity, but a more refined, nuanced understanding of perhaps even of what it is to feel. And then certainly within that, how we can describe our feelings was even really struck when I received a message from a dear friend and colleague who does a lot of work with emotions in the Emotion Code, a fantastic series. It's a fantastic system for emotional clearing. And as part of this, she sent out a new sheet which had more emotions, identifying these subtle levels of emotion that hadn't been present or included in the earlier sheet to clear and understand those energies that can be with us. And I thought that was so brilliant. This very clear, established emotional system that is now needing to expand itself to include some of those subtler understandings. And as it does, it's capturing more of those and allowing for us to release those. And this really also goes along with that energy image that you still see here behind me, which is really getting into the nitty gritty, getting into these little pieces that are sitting within us, these stuck emotions, this trapped energy that hasn't been allowed to flow through our system. And by being able to name it and to describe it, we're better able to be with it. And we're able to be with it, and we can vocalize it, and we can feel it, then we can also release it. So there's real benefit from being able to expand our emotional vocabulary. And also with Mercury, I so think about listening to ourselves, so listening to our own feelings, and also listening to the feelings of those who are around us. And the more that we listen to these feelings, the more that we respond with our own feelings, that we stay in this place of feeling, the more of a safe space that we create for emotional expression. So this also strikes me as a month where we're going to get that opportunity to create a much safer, broader space for listening and for emotional expression, if we so choose. And the last thing I want to highlight, I think it's always worth looking at the sun and the moon and the relationship between the two of these as we are entering into this month. And the moon we see here in Virgo, and the moon is approaching the first quarter phase. It's just at the end of the crescent phase. So this is certainly a month where we may feel like there is a lot of active growth, where we're feeling like we are going through a growth spurt, as that first quarter moon often suggests. I sometimes get that word crisis coming through when I think about a first quarter or a third quarter moon, because again, it is that tension point between the sun and the moon. And in this case, crisis isn't bad, it's just a decision point. So I might have this feeling this month that you're building towards a decision point, or that you're needing to make some sort of a decision. And this decision again might be one that's emotional in its nature, and it might also be with this Virgo moon really helpful to get clear on the facts, really helpful to get clear and grounded in, well, what actually happened? What is the evidence that is here before you? And to ground your feelings in that, rather than to let your feelings run away with stories you might have created around what's actually present. So I'm really getting that sense here that this could be very helpful as we're approaching this decision point about how we want to grow, perhaps how we want to express ourselves, and really being aware of what sits before us, what is the evidence that sits before us, and maybe even here, allowing for your logic in some way to serve the emotion, and not using your logic to try to adjust the emotion or to change the feeling, but just to give you something that you can respond to, something that you can feel into, as opposed to when you're approaching something with a blank slate. Sometimes it can feel really overwhelming. So much can come in. There can be so much complexity, especially with this expanded emotional vocabulary we're getting. So to really narrow it down to what is the circumstance that's before me, what is it that I see, and how do I feel looking at this? I don't have to look at my whole life. If you think about an issue that might show up in a relationship, I don't have to look at every single thing that's happened in the context of this relationship. I can just look at what's before me right now, this one thing. What are the facts? What's showing up, and how do I feel? And your feeling will guide you to whatever it is needs to be given a voice to at this moment. Your heart really is your compass. And I'll be exploring that more in this month's magic class, which you're also very invited to join. I'll put a link down below if you want to check it out. The last thing I wanted to highlight here is that we also have the moon, as the month begins, approaching a trine with Mars. It's almost exact at this particular moment with Mars and Taurus. And I always love the moon and Mars coming together because it really gives us this feeling of taking action or being ready to take action. This awareness, perhaps, that something wants to be done. And with Mars and Taurus, It's not a battering ram. It's not jumping perhaps immediately into action and knowing everything that's happening and pushing our way through things, as Mars and Aries can sometimes so brilliantly do. With Mars and Taurus, it's more that sense of I'm ready for something to unfold. I'm ready to take the first step to allow for something to unfold. So maybe even if we think about what is this crisis point or this moment of growth, well, what is the first action that I can take right now to allow it to unfold? And again, with that moon in Virgo, it can be a small step that is taking us forward. So again, if we use that simple coming back to what are the choices that are before me, what are the options that I can pick, and what is the one thing that I can do to advance that right now, that's something that this configuration would be remarkably supportive of. So that's a great overview of all of the astrology that awaits us and the energy that sits behind us. And I'm very grateful for all that has flowed through. I'm never entirely sure what's going to emerge when I get to tune into this energy. So it's really nice to be here live with you in the moment. This is so much of what my work is coming into greater presence with the planets and allowing for them to show up exactly as they want to and to guide the way forward. And the way that I like to do this, and something that we're all being invited to do this month, is to really tune into our hearts. So if you'd like to get a more detailed overview of what this month holds, I will put a link down below if you want to tune into part 2. You're also very welcome to join my community. I offer monthly magic classes, and this month's magic class will be on viewing your heart as a compass and really listening and tuning into that heart space. It's something that I do every time the sun changes signs and we all get a chance to step into this energy of this new month. I also offer weekly heart-centered writings directly from my own life. And this is really what I want to offer to you, is a chance for you to write yourself into greater contact and connection with your own heart. So it's what I do. And in that space, I share things that are very personal to me. And I know that as I do that, that I am also going to be hitting on some of these themes that we're all experiencing because we are really all in it together. So thank you so much for tuning in. And if you want to connect with me one-on-one, the last thing I'll say is I got a little tap on the shoulder to just offer some sessions, and these will be at a wonderfully heart-centered price in that you get to pick to help you open your heart. It's something that I've been doing with clients for a long time and very actively this week, and something that I'm also doing more with myself, becoming aware of how I can open up to a more full experience of life. And I know that if it's showing up for me and it's something that I'm working on now, it's also what I'm going to be best at for right now. How cool is that? That what I'm working on is also what I can best offer you right now. We're all works in progress. So I very much invite you to join me there. I know for me, there's been a lot of heaviness that's been sitting in my heart recently, and it hasn't been related to anything that's sitting in my life. Again, it's not like I'm seeing things that I'm responding to. It does feel like it is coming from other places. It's these old stories that have been sitting here in my body. Maybe things I inherited, maybe things that are from other lifetimes. I'm not sure, but what I do know is I'm aware of them now, and now I have a chance to release them. So I want to offer you that chance too. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time. All my love.